All right. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talent Views webinar Wednesday series. My name is Diane. I am your facilitator for today. And later on, I will also be joined by my colleague Mika, who will co-facilitate half of the webinar today. So again, the topic that we would like to cover is to how to use and leverage career conversation to drive business success. So if you are here trying, your agenda is to really trying to ensure that whatever conversation you are carrying with you, with your team members, with your subordinate, or maybe even with your top management, is something that is meaningful and at the same time gives you the results that you need. So again, my name is Diane, and you are now here with us, Talent Views Webinar Wednesday series, using career conversation to drive business success. So while we are waiting for some of the participants to join us today, wanted to give you an orientation of what you can see right now in your screen. We are on Zoom. We are live also via Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. And anytime you feel you have any questions, aha moment that you want to share with me, with us, the rest of the panel, I wanted you to open your middle portion of the screen, Q&A, and just feel free to type, fire away any questions or sharings that you want the team to know or to understand. So I'll try my best also to open it once in a while I am presenting. The audio setting is at this point turned off by default for the participants. So all throughout the session, it will just be me and my co-facilitator later on that you will be hearing. Question, I'm seeing a question right now. Will the copy of this session webinar be recorded? Definitely. Something that you can share after with your colleagues if you think that this will also be relevant for them. Okay, so again, today's series is all about leveraging using your career conversation to drive business success, ensuring that you are in the right webinar also. And I wanted to walk you through three agendas that we wanted to discuss and share in the next 30 to 40 minutes. So first, of course, is how to continuously build a leadership pipeline, especially now that most of us, or probably 50% of us, is working remotely. How do we ensure that every conversation, every programs, processes that are in place are still running effectively and still start targeting what your employees need? I will also be touching on critical competencies that is emerging right now that would help your team to become more productive and at the same time promote business continuity. And then later on, Mika will all be touching about how to create meaningful conversation in every step of the way. This is very much important right now because, as you know, even though we are back to work or to our physical office right now, from what we are hearing, there's team A, team B. We really don't see everyone face to face. So most of the time, all the conversation, all meetings, all decisions right now are happening online. So how do you still make sure that you humanize the experience, even though you're not seeing everyone right now physically? Hoping that this session will be able to help you again rebuild that conversation with the people that you're working closely with. So my name is Diane. I'm part of the Talent View team. I started my career probably 13 years back doing assessment. And up until now, I can say that I believe there's more than 1,000 already that I have assessed, spanning from different organizations, local and multinational, both in Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. In terms of certification, I've got my both in British Psychological Society and Australian New Zealand Psychological Society as a certified assessor. And background-wise, I am a registered psychometrician with a degree in business administration. So hoping that later on, my experience, some of the case studies that we've found successful working across more than 200 active clients right now for Talent View is something that I can also bring with you in the next 30 to 40 minutes. And of course, later, Mika will also be sharing with you her expertise when it comes to building competent leaders across your organization. And at the same time, how do you ensure that meaningful conversation are happening every stage of the way? So Talent View, who Talent View is. So for those who have been attending our webinar series, I know you guys know Talent View by heart right now, but just to give you a quick introduction, everything that we do revolves around employer branding. We've been here probably 8 years ago. I also have been part of the Talent View team when it started in Manila 8 years back. And the key thing about the organization right now is how to maintain, or how do you ensure that your organization stay relevant also to your target market, and how do you continuously promote your brand out there. So to ensure that you're doing so, I hope that we can partner with you in the future in coming up with the best strategy to attract and retain talents, decide effective programs that would again attract and retain them, and lastly throw technology to common challenges in talent management, or anything that you think can that you can improve on, especially with the use of technology right now. So we've worked with, as I've mentioned earlier, with more than 200 brands right now. And later on, along the way, in the process, in the frameworks that we will be sharing with you, I hope to be able to share some of the practices and cases that we've worked with across these brands. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin our session for today. And we've loved numbers. We love analytics, as you know. And I wanted to start this with a study conducted by Global Career Conversation in 2016. According to the research, according to those who participated in this global research, only 16% of the employees indicate that they have an ongoing conversation with their managers about their careers. I think the number one reason right now, also based from this similar research, is that managers, organizations is actually quite afraid to create or engage their employees with a career conversation, because they too doesn't know where to promote or where to put candidates in place. So as much as they want to engage with their talents, only 16% right now can actually feel that they have this meaningful conversation with their managers and with the organization. So quick pause to understand where you are right now. So wanted to see if, in terms of leadership buy-in, are you currently an organization wherein your leaders actively support a culture of learning, growth, career conversation internally? If your answer is yes, good for you. You have leadership support and buy-in. If currently probably half or 50-50, yes, but you need to do some refinements in the program or the way you do your learning and development, or probably you are still in the process of exploring, or this is not a key priority, but hoping that at some point it will be a top priority for your organization. So feel free to answer, and then later on we'll be able to see the pulse of the team. Okay, so let's try to see the results. 27% mentioned that you guys have a solid leadership support and buy-in. I think I'm really happy to hear this. Good job for you guys. And then 73%, or probably 30-70, as we can see right now, would need some refinement. Still good news. At least I'm not seeing here a no answer. So hoping that this session for today will help you also refine some of your programs, or the way you cascade your talent management, development, learning initiatives for the team. Thank you so much for answering. I'll go back to this poll results later on. So a culture of learning and development requires active participation from all parties. I think this is somehow resonates to the previous poll that I have shared with you. It is not only self-led. Most of the time, we wanted that learning and growth should be a responsibility of the individual, of the employee. They should take care of their own, how they will progress in the group, while I also believe that should be the case, you have to also ensure that if you want a self-led or self-driven career growth and development in the organization, ensure also that the managers and even the organization themselves are equipped with the right resources to offer to the individual. So if there is a concrete 100% active participation from all parties, definitely it will drive business success, business growth, less attrition rate, and higher retention rate from your organization. Ultimately, in the group, we always say this is the common challenges that we hear when you talk about getting successors for critical roles in the organization. Most of the time we really wanted to promote from within, but sometimes organizations are also left with the decision of, let's just buy new talents from the outside because we don't have a ready pipeline right now. So hoping that you still get a healthy mix of probably 80-20, 80% are really coming from within while 20% are new blood. Because if you're able to address developmental growth strategies, or you know the individual knows where he or she would like to go, the managers is very much supportive in providing all the resources that the individual needs, ultimately you'll be able to have that healthy mix of 80-20. So, and at the same time, research have shown that those who are organic or coming from within have a higher likelihood of staying also in the organization because they know already the culture rather than buying talents from the outside. So guys, this is, I hope, an aha moment for now, that it's not only self-driven, but at the same time, it should also be supported by the managers and the organization in general. And with that, I wanted to quickly share with you our leadership pipeline builder framework, wherein we talk about the 3A approach for Talent View. When we talk about the 3A approach, it is aligning with the business organization, continuously assessing capabilities, skills, competencies of your talents, and of course, supporting, accelerating their development, growth in your organization. And this is a cycle. It doesn't stop on a yearly or the quarterly basis, but rather every time the goal would change, the mission or vision of the organization will change. Um, Employees, people in the organization should also change their goals to align to that overall mission and vision. So it doesn't mean that if this person has already submitted a project, then his career is already done. Of course, that's not the case. We have to be able to identify what new goals or what new projects or engagement responsibilities that we should give to this person in order for this person to be able to contribute more to the group. And again, it's a cycle of aligning, assessing, and accelerating. And wanted to give you some quick notes or steps rather on how you can achieve the 3A approach for continuously equipping your leaders, your organization with competent employees. So first, of course, would be goal setting. We divided it in 3 phases. The blue one is your align, the lighter, the blue-green is your assessing, and then the gray would be your development acceleration. And remember that for every stage of the way that we will be discussing, career conversation and meaningful discussion should happen every stage of the way. It doesn't mean that when you do your interview and feedback, then that's the only time that you will converse with them. Of course, definitely no. At the very beginning, when you set your goals, you identify what would be their key responsibility, key role in the organization. It should be crystal clear, and it should also align to where they see themselves in the organization in the next 2 to 3 years time. When you communicate, launch programs, learning initiatives, it should also be, again, aligned to the goals that you have set. And when you do your assessment, all of this together, interview, validation interview, giving feedback on how they have fared in the assessment portion, you have to be able to, again, go back to the alignment portion wherein it is all connected with the overall goal, mission, and vision of the group. You cannot just give them performance targets or projects or engagement that is not aligned altogether. And ensure also 5 and 6, you are supporting them with the needed resources, 70-20-10 model. 70% would be mostly on experience, on the job training, 20% would be coaching and mentoring, and then 10% education. And lastly, do a quarterly, every 6 months, every annual review on where they are already. And all throughout this session for today, we'll be walking you these 6 steps rather, and ensuring that every conversation happens along the way. Right? So starting off with goal setting, we now go back. It may sound simple, but if we are not doing it correctly at the very beginning, you'll probably notice that all of the interventions, all of the development, assessment will not target certain skills, competencies, and will not also contribute to the success of the business if step one is not properly done, or we are not able to identify correctly what is the goal. Are you targeting, or do you have a financial goal? Do you have a customer engagement goal? What about process improvement and learning and development goal? We usually wanted you to reflect and go back to your respective organization and understand what are the concrete goals. Is it tied up with the strategic pillars of your organization? Does it contribute to the overall mission and vision? So if you are in the process of expansion, for example, opening new stores, or probably hiring for 100 new people for a certain account that you have closed, ensure that, again, you have those metrics in place. May it be it targets financial, customer, process, or learning. And at the same time, use a SMART methodology. SMART template is something that has been established for quite a long time. It is simple, but sometimes if you missed out a single criteria here, the goal will not be a goal after all. So ensure that it is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And as you can see here, I've set a very simple example. For example, your organization is a sales-driven organization, meaning you're a product centric, you have to push products out there in the market, and you are targeting at least per department 100 million sales closing in the next 6 months. So you will be able to see here your measure of success is 100 million. Attainable, of course, you should be hiring for people with sales and probably negotiation background, because it answers the question, do you have the right tools and skills to achieve this goal? Maybe technology wise, you may want to implement a tool that can monitor all sales progress, all contracts that is automated, can be signed immediately online or via mobile. And would it be realistic? Is it tied up with your overall mission and vision? And at the same time, is it time bound? So if you put in here 6 months, then somehow it is now measurable. So again, let's pause and make sure that when you create a goal for your department, or for the organization, or for the people that you're working with right now, you're using a SMART goal all throughout the way. And again, if you we normally recommend that you don't only focus on one goal, probably assign 3 to 4 goals that would again target not only financial but also customer, process, and learning and development goals for your team. And when we go to communication planning and launch, sometimes the common pitfall of different groups right now is that you have a great program, you have a great trainings, interventions, etc. However, when you ask employees if they know about it, the common answer would be, I'll have to go back to HR. I'll have to ask them again. So something that somehow breaks our heart, because we've put a lot of effort in building our people engagement, people management program, just to find out that they're not familiar with it. So ensure that whatever programs that you have as of this point, you are communicating it 100%, being transparent to everyone. Whether you're using technology, you're using your company town hall event, or you're using whatever channels to promote those programs, ensure that they know it. Sometimes it's even part of onboarding of our new hires. And for other organizations, they would even make it a compliance for new hires or employees to complete certain certain learning interventions, development interventions. And again, it is tied up to their goals every year. So ensure that they know it. And if there are specific targets that is tied up with those programs, specify it. Identify it during the goal setting component so that they know also why you are doing it. And I think right now, because almost everyone right now is working remotely or working from home, be transparent as much as possible. This is the time that we need to revamp, we need to re-engage them again, promote as much as possible those engagement program, because we know that the key talents right now, according to Josh Bernstein, with this pandemic that is going on globally, Our people will always be our best asset right now. So I hope that you are currently taking care of them. You are, again, communicating continuously with them and being 100% authentic in all of this engagement. So that's second step. We now move on to, oh, just a quick statistics. 91% of employees, according to McKinsey research, say that they are more effective if they can see how their individual goals fit into the big picture. I think I've also read an article a few weeks back that over communication, you will not be punished for over communicating a program, right? So ensure that everyone in the group knows what you guys are currently doing, and don't just engage them with a lot of postings of programs. Make sure that they do also understand it. So third aspect, assessing strengths and development gaps for the current incumbents. While working with various organizations right now, I would say that when the pandemic started, we last March, March to probably up until now, 50% of the organization that we are working closely with mentioned that they are on a freeze hire. So meaning, because the pandemic, of course, it really struck most of the organization as of the moment. They have no choice but to stop hiring at some point. So what they are doing now is that all the efforts from talent acquisition are now being moved to talent development. There are some are even doing profiling assessment, ensuring that if there are critical openings in the group, instead of getting out talents from the outside, they are now converting, or they are now targeting candidates from within. So if you are able to do that, ensure that you have a sound assessment strategy in place, making sure that you are hitting the right competencies. But even before going into the right competencies, ensure that you know also what you are looking for. What is the role requirement? What would be the task? What would be the main KPIs or key performance indicators of your talent? And then from there, tie it up with competencies, tie it up with your core, your functional, technical expertise that you think will help this person become more successful in the role. And if you're able to do that, throw assessment to it, so that you make your process much more objective. And wanted to give you some insights coming from the World Economic Forum. This was published March of 2020, that there are 6 intelligence competencies right now that really drive smart leadership. And probably for some, we know this already, but if you're in the process of identifying competencies that would be important for you, you may want to use this framework. One, of course, is learning agility. Have a passion of learning, open innovation, developing people, and can relate and communicate with the vision of organization. So it's not just your typical ability to process information, but your ability to adopt quickly. Once you commit a mistake, you are able to bounce back and be able to apply how you can correct that mistake along the way. Next is contextual intelligence, wherein cultivating and listening to divergent perspective. As you know, there's so many ideas right now. If you are the leader of your organization and you're working with more than 50 executives, those 50 executives would have their own ideas altogether. How are you able to put together all those ideas and be able to come up with a solution that would resonate or that would really solve the current challenges that you have? Being technologically adept, meaning there's a lot of technology similar with ideas. There's a lot of technology right now, but what would be that the most important technology that would again help you address your common challenges? I think one person mentioned in our previous webinar, being cost intelligent is also equally important. So you're not only buying technology, but you also are investing to the right technology partners. Grit, bounce back after setback, and be able to continue to deliver. So Angela Duckworth mentioned that passion and perseverance are equally important. You cannot just have a person or a leader with a high analytical skill, but is lacking on the emotional, social, and cultural IQ, and even grit. So ensure that there is a balance of what we call the 3H: head, heart, and hand, as you can see. I've mentioned social and cultural IQ because, as you know, it's much more difficult now to connect with people online, but hoping that you're able to somehow find a way to be able to connect with them, humanize the entire experience, even though you're seeing them at this point virtually. And lastly is becoming transformative. Two types of leadership. You have the transactional, which is very much engaged with the day-to-day operation, but you also have a transformative leaders who is able to drive meaningful roadmap and naturally be able to transform people, influence people so that they can contribute, they can realize their full potential in the organization. So again, a transformative leader also carries out transformative, meaningful conversation. So ensure that if your role right now is you are developing leaders, make a cross check or probably assess if they have this, or if you are attending the webinar today, just to also cross check if you currently have this as a leader. I believe later on we'll be giving you some free assessment so that you can check if there are gaps that you also need to address. Okay. So that is for your 6 intelligence to drive smart leadership according to World Economic Forum in March 2020. And there's a lot of assessment that you can find now on how to measure it. One of the tools that we carry is the Taligent competency-based assessment. And rather than using a manual assessment wherein you have to answer via paper and pen, you have to ask the candidate to be at your office, to proctor them live. You don't really need to do that. Just throw to them an assessment link, put together the assessment that you want, may it be a skills assessment, a leadership assessment, EQ or grit, or even understanding their preference, what motivates them, definitely something that you can already do online. And if you want to take your assessment to the next level, you want to correlate it with the competency framework, something that I highly recommend. You just don't use, again, technological intelligence. You just don't use technology just because it is fancy, but ensure that the technology really addresses the requirements that you have, similar to my example here. So if your key traits would include EQ, being tech savvy, learning agility, critical thinking, and innovation, ensure that the assessment can also measure those competencies relevant for your organization. And lastly, when you do your reports, no need for you to manually set it up. Everything is done online right now. You can generate the report right after a candidate completes the assessment. So I guess my main point here is that if your organization is struggling to objectively identify areas of strengths, areas of gaps, you are in the process of wanting to really identify the right intervention and development programs for your team, you really don't need to start from scratch. There's a lot of assessment or third-party providers that can work with you to identify those initiatives. So that is your third step, being able to identify strengths and gaps within the group. And lastly, if you also want to take your assessment again to the next level, apart from understanding their performance, which easily you can see via their the way that they have delivered, targets that they have achieved, or customer service satisfaction, average handling time if you're working with clients abroad. Then if you have the performance score and you're able to also assess for potential, the two different the main difference of when you talk about performance potential is that performance is a measurement of what the candidate has been able to contribute in the past, so meaning their past performance. But when you talk about potential is what they can contribute in the future. So are they agile enough to learn new things? Do they have the competency set to mentor, develop people? So these two are two different things, and once you're able to identify it, it is easier now to probably move people around and identify the right interventions for them. Okay, so that ends my my presentation. I will be turning it over now to my colleague Nika, who will be presenting to you the three stages: interviewing and feedback. Fifth one would be mapping the journey, and lastly is checking and reflecting process. Mika?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Diane, and good morning, everyone. I'm very happy and excited to see all of you here today joining our session. So, like Diane mentioned, for the next half of our discussion, we'll be drilling down into career conversations. So, how can you now implement this in your own organizations, and how will you sustain it moving forward? But before we go there, allow me to quickly introduce myself first. I'm Mika Palatao, and for the past 4 years, my career has been greatly focused on identifying high potentials, finding the next successors to leadership roles of various organizations across Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam. So by uncovering the strengths, the passions, and motivations of their key talents, we partner with organizations to help them come up with the best development interventions fit for their aspiring leaders up to business leaders, which then creates a ready now future-proof talent pipeline for their organization. So I'm hoping that for today, I can share with you some insights that I've learned along the way. Okay, so let's begin with a quick self-check first. So have you had a meaningful career conversation with your superior or subordinate in the last 6 months? So by meaningful, did you talk about your short-term and long-term career plans? Did you talk about your next steps in the organization? Did you talk about possible development actions for you? So have you had that conversation with your subordinate or superior in the last 6 months? So I'll give you 30 seconds to about a minute to answer this question. So despite the lockdown, despite the community quarantines, have you had the chance to talk to your superior or subordinate about your career? Okay, so I think we're ready. We can take a look at your results now. Okay, this is a good mix of results. So 64% said that yes, I had one in the last 6 months. That's very great to hear. And 14% said that no, we only discussed metrics and KPIs. And 21% said that no, we're thinking of it but have not done one in the last 6 months. So for those who answered yes, that's great to hear. That's very good for you. I'm happy to hear that. And for those who said no, I hope you can take some things in this discussion to help you get started. Okay? So we'll move on to the next slide. This is a study conducted by Penna Career Services. So according to them, 36% of managers admit to not knowing what their direct reports' career goals are over the next 12 months. That's one in every three managers. So is this number surprising? So to some, maybe yes, which means you've had great experiences with your past managers. That's good for you. But to others, this may not be surprising at all. And is this fact concerning? As HR, definitely, yes, this is concerning for us. What happens is most managers think that performance appraisals are the same as career conversations, but they have a major difference. Well, performance appraisals, you talk about your KPIs, you talk about how far along or how close you are in reaching your targets for the year. Career conversations, on the other hand, they talk about your motivations. What drives you to do your best at work? What kind of achievements do you feel the most fulfilled in? So the conversation now shifts from past oriented to future oriented. Can you next slide, please? So now, if done effectively, these meaningful career conversations, they can boost flexibility of your team. Managers can uncover interests or strengths that they may not realize it's there before. So they can convert it into value-adding initiatives for the organization. Meaningful career conversations, they can build your talent pipeline. They can increase your performance. The import performance not just of your team but the entire organization, and we'll be walking you through that for the rest of the slides later on. So which now this leads us to the fourth step of our leadership pipeline builder framework. Next slide, please. So conducting an interview and feedback between the manager and the employee. So some questions that the managers can reflect on before talking to their employees are these three items. So how do you envision your direct report's role in the organization in the next year? What milestones or achievements do you want him to accomplish? And what are you grooming him to be? Are you grooming him to be more effective at what he is currently doing? Or are you grooming him to be a potential successor to your role in the future? So managers need to be able to answer these questions. And they also need to realize that they have a huge influence over the direction of their direct reports career in the future. So as HR, it is also our duty to help empower and enable these managers to help them fulfill this goal that can be a bit overwhelming even for everyone. So some organizations, they utilize video interviews. Next slide, please. If managers have their points for reflections, now it's now the time for the employees to conduct their own reflections as well. So we ask them their short-term and long-term plans, how aligned their personal goals are to the goals of the organization. So some employees, they may not be comfortable answering these questions face-to-face. So we provide a preliminary video interview. And then for managers, it also helps them prepare for the conversation. So more or less, they understand, they have an idea on what their employees want. So next slide, please. So for the actual one-on-one career conversation, career aspirations and feedback, they can align on their reflections that they both made and their expectations. So many managers, they avoid career conversations because they think that it would lead to expectations that they won't be able to satisfy later on. But again, this is also why we want to conduct frequent career aspirations, interview, and feedback. We want to create alignment. So they don't realize that many employees, they don't immediately ask for promotions. So they simply want to know how can they grow in their current role? How can they prepare themselves if ever a promotion does come up? So it's really about creating that alignment between the employee and the manager. So during their career conversation, now they both work on one main question, and that is, where do I want to go? And as your manager, how can I help you get there? So next slide, please. So after answering this question, they can proceed to the next step, which is mapping the journey. So from career conversations, you're now making it happen and turning it into actionable plans. And this comes in the form of individual development plans. So, usually employees write their IDPs, they go to HR, ask for a list of trainings, online courses that they can attend. They ask if they can attend MBA courses, certificate courses, only for us to find out at the very end of the year that they haven't really done any of them. So they focus so much on the education component, but really it's just a very small part of their learning. So next slide, please. So following the 70-20-10 model of learning, we have experience or learning by doing, that's 70%. We have exposure or learning through socializing or by seeing others, that is 20%. And we also have education, learning through theories, which is 10%. So instead of focusing so much on education, they can actually tap into experience and exposure. And it doesn't have to be grand learning initiatives. It can be as simple as a role play exercise. So if you're part of the sales team and you do a lot of client consultations, presentations, then having a role play session with a colleague, if you're the one presenting, then that's already experience for you, 70%. If you're the one conducting feedback or observing the person, then that is exposure for you, 20%. So they don't have employees, they don't have to go beyond or far from their KPIs, they can actually integrate the IDPs, the learning initiatives, into things that they're already doing for the organization. It can also be value adding initiatives, some process improvements, or launching internal programs. So, depending on the goals that they've set during their career conversations, depending on what they want to happen in the future, they can mix and match these learning initiatives so that they can make sure that they're able to conduct the next step in their career journey. Next slide, please. And this brings us to the last step of our leadership pipeline builder framework, checking in and reflecting on progress. So the key to a sustainable career development program is, and there's no way around it really, organizations must be ready. So it's a two-way street. So development programs, launching career conversations, they encourage employees to step up. So whether they're people that you already expect to step up or people who are usually on the sidelines, they encourage people to step up. So that now they're given equal opportunities to perform and develop themselves. And organizations must be ready for those employees. Meaning, if I'm an employee and I come up to you and say, hey, I've got a great idea for a program, and I think it won't just benefit me, but benefit the rest of my team as well. And I really want to launch it. I think it's going to be helpful. It's tied to my IDPs. It's aligned with where I want to be in the future for my career. I just need your permission. And organizations must be ready to say yes, not have them passed on from person to person, or have them go through a tedious process just to be told no at the very end. So organizations must be ready. It's very important that employees are given the opportunity to really tick those boxes on their IDPs. They're given the opportunity to perform and develop themselves. Because no matter how motivated or talented the employee is, if they feel like their initiatives and efforts are not rewarded or supported, then there will still be chances of losing them, either through resignation or even just not trying anymore. So there's chances of losing these talents, and we don't want that. We want them to be motivated and well um, well prepared for any roles that they would be taking on in the future. And one way on how you can increase participation and engagement while making sure all three E's are available is by creating a holistic learning journey map for your talents. You can include online courses, include coaching and mentoring programs. You can include facilitating internal learning sessions, role play sessions. So all three E's are already integrated in their journey. But also be mindful when you're creating your learning journey. There's management track and technical track. So we don't force anyone to be in a specific track. We go by their strengths and aspirations. So not everyone wants to be leaders or wants to lead a team. Some talents can be technical experts. They really want to master their own craft. Some talents, they can be coaches and mentors. So it's important that the employees know that one track is not higher or more relevant than the other, and it's a possible track that they can take on in the future. So after laying all of these down, after putting them in one holistic system, now you have to reinforce it. Reward those who are able to accomplish, create leaderboards so that you can stimulate healthy competition among your talents. You give recognition for every milestones. So, they say millennials, they always want to be recognized for everything that they do, for every little achievement. So we have to put that in so that the change in behavior that we're looking for, the change in mindset, they get built on, and eventually they get more difficult to break because it becomes part of your organizational culture. And then going back to the entire leadership pipeline builder framework that we've shared with you, we have to identify goals of the organization and communicate these goals to the employees in a manner that they would know its purpose and value to them, and understand their competency and personality profile so that you and the managers can work on together to best maximize their abilities, their strengths, their gaps, where you can put them in the organization, and then conduct a meaningful career conversation. And it can just be a memo or a guideline. It really has to be an alignment between the employee and their managers. Now, take those conversation, take what you've talked about and make it into an actionable journey. So that's our leadership pipeline builder, how you can use career conversations to drive business success. So again, quick poll for everyone. Our last poll for today: which among these initiatives do you consider as your areas of strengths? We have understanding goals, we have launching learning and development programs, assessing for strengths and gaps assessment. Are your managers capable of doing conversations and feedback to their talents? Do you have an ongoing individual development plans? And lastly, do you do milestone checks to make sure that your IDPs, your career conversations have follow-throughs? So these items, all 6 steps. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer this, and then we can look at your results. All right, I think that's a good time already. Let's take a look at your poll answers. All right. Okay, this is a very good insight. So 77% of the team here in our discussion said that their areas of strength are understanding goals. So having identifying where the business is going at this point. 31% launching and learning and development programs. 46% assessing for strengths and gaps and having conversations and feedback with their manager. And then only 23% have standard individual development plans. And then lastly, 38% are doing milestone checks. But looking at this poll, most of you guys said that you're good in understanding goals. And that's the very first step of the process. Like Diane said, if on the first step you're already missing it, then there's still it's the first thing that you need to do, and that's great that everyone here is already done with their first step. So the next steps, we can work on it on the following months. All right, so going back, just some key points on this entire discussion. We have first, create career conversations at every step. So use every opportunity to speak with your team. Help them drive career conversations. The next thing is enable your managers. So effective and meaningful career conversations depend on how managers deliver them. So your managers need to know that you support them the same way that they support their direct reports. So we have to enable them. Next is revamp individual development plans. Make the most out of the 70-20-10 model of learning. So remember that 70% is experience. So encourage cross-functional special projects that take them out of their comfort zones. And then lastly, and this is my favorite, gamify your learning journey. So increase engagement by making learning journeys interactive and self-driven. As much as possible, make it a collaborative experience between managers, direct reports, and colleague to colleague. Okay? And now let's welcome back Diane for the question and answer portion. So feel free to send us your answers and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mika. So, guys, fire away. You can ask us any questions. You can let us know if there are any initiatives that you also want to share or any aha moments that you think you've learned from this webinar series. So, I guess we have one.
Okay, we have one here. How long would this whole program take to launch? So, Diane?
Okay, so I think in terms of timeline, it really depends on the, again, we circle back to the overall goals, mission, vision, programs that you are trying to launch. So I think there definitely should be a start point, but in terms of end point, it really now depends on where your organization is as of the moment. So for example, within your department, you are tasked to probably expand to 30 new retail store in the next 5 years. So in terms of timeline, that might be your timeline, 5 years. You should be able to launch 30 new stores, say for example, for a certain country. And from there, once you're able to identify your overall goal as an organization, map out now what would be the financial, your customer, your people goals to be able to lead you to that overall goal. And once you're able to accomplish that, I believe there will be another set of goals, and even probably middle or along the way, you will definitely experience adjustments or new goals that you need to accomplish. So I think there is no outright answer to how long the program will be. It really depends now on certain criterias and goals that you would like to manage. But definitely, you need to inject milestones every stage of the way. So may it be on a quarterly milestone or every 6 months milestone, you have to be able to do some check and reflect portion, as Mika mentioned earlier.
Yep. So following, adding to what Diane said, I think for how long would this whole program to take to launch, it's also a matter of what you already have in place. So maybe it's just a matter of making everything holistic, but try to make an audit first of what you already have and take it from there.
So Mika, I also have a question here. What skills do managers need to hold effective career conversation? Maybe you can share your insight.
I think the very first thing that managers need to have emotional quotient. So understanding the motivations, understanding what drives your employees. It really takes empathy and listening very well to what they are currently saying. So paying attention not just to what they're saying, but their behavioral cues based on your observations with working with them for the past. So taking all those in and putting that into the conversation that you're going to have with them.
Correct. And Mika, I think I can also share some insight on question number 3, which is also related to question number 2. As the supervisor, how can I make it easier to have a career conversation? I wanted to use this competency that I've learned from one of my mentor. He mentioned about courageous authenticity. I think if both of not only the managers but at the same time the coach and the coachee are both authentic, meaning they are very much transparent on what they are feeling, may it be negative or positive. It's easier now to really identify a common developmental intervention. So, for example, if I am really true to myself that at this point there is no open roles, just say it to the person that you are managing. But making sure that even though there's no open position as of the moment, we can probably explore special projects that you think will also help your subordinate become a better version of him or herself. That way, if there's a new position that will come in, this person can now possibly and confidently say that I can take on that new role in the organization. So being courageous and at the same time being authentic to your words. Don't say that you have something while in truth you don't really have it. So just be open, 100% transparent to one another. And just like what Mika mentioned, emotional quotient is something that is not automatic to everyone. So practice listening, practice removing all the noises, and make sure that when you create that conversation with your team, you are really 100% into the discussion.
Yes. Very much agree. And just like what I've said earlier, it's all just a matter of alignment. So apart from being transparent, it's really aligning your expectations between manager and
Mhm.
employees so that both of you know where they are in the organization.
Yeah. I think I like this question, Mika, and we can answer it together. We can give our insights both. How, and this is a common question that we also encounter every time we do consultancy. How might we be able to address tenured employees who have been in the same role for their company? How might we be able to convince them to move forward and upskill to the demands of the ever-changing business? So I guess this is where our courageous authenticity also will kick in. Sometimes, especially if we are coming in, this person have worked with the organization and for the rest of his life, meaning 20, 30, 40 years with the organization, probably even in terms of age, older than you. So it's really difficult, but I guess there's no way to to say it if the business organization is really headed into this direction. So say for example, you have to eliminate some manual process. So hence, meaning you have to put technology in place, and you know that some of the roles in the organization might be affected because some will be automated. That is a common challenge that we are all experiencing. At least be able just tell it outright, and it will now go back to the maturity of that person. And if that person would refuse to learn a technology or even refuse to upskill him or herself, then maybe he is the one really putting an end in his progression in the organization. So it's not really because of you, the one who is talking or the one who is offering the program. It is really on him now. It go back now to the maturity of that person that you're talking to. Mika?
Yeah, for me, keep in mind as well that some employees there could be for management track and some can be in technical tracks. So maybe for this specific employee, you don't necessarily have to ask them to move up in a higher role. Maybe they're really contented in doing what they're currently doing, and we just need to support them and help them out in their adapting to the current role that they have. So yes.
Yeah. Maybe these are the people that you can tap as subject matter
Yeah.
experts along the way. So if really moving upward is not their key idea as of the moment. Okay, so we'll just give you some final notes if ever there are no more questions. So again, webinar resources will be available to you after. Thank you so much to our Talent Leadership Academy team for putting together our webinar, ensuring that everyone in this call will have your own copy of of the series, and then hoping that if you find this relevant, you'll be able to share it also with your colleagues, including presentation slides and some other additional resources that you can find in our slides that we have presented. So guys, before we let you go, we really wanted to understand how we have fared in the entire process. So we want to continuously get your feedback, improve on how we can do our webinar series better. If you have topics that you have in mind, this is now your opportunity to be able to share insights, and hoping that we'll be able to adjust as well for the next coming webinar. So like our Talent View page, our Facebook account, our LinkedIn account, so that you also get some notifications on our upcoming webinars and publications that we often do. And then, of course, as promised, you'll have your own individual assessment. We'll be happy to share with you your results, so that you, if you are a manager trying to reflect on your leadership style, you'll be able to get a lot of insights in this assessment report. All right. So guys, connect with us, Mika and myself, Dayan. You have our QR code here. We're happy to again have you in our session for today, hoping that we'll see you again in our succeeding runs. Mika?
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. I hope you're able to take some things so that you can go back to your own organizations and implement those initiatives. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us over LinkedIn or set an appointment with us.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you've learned a lot. Connect with you via LinkedIn.
Bye
Bye-bye.
everyone.